for your listening enjoyment, John Lund as Johnny Dollar.
Bradley, Johnny. Read any good books lately?
Now, that's a brilliant conversational bit.
I'm referring specifically to the books of Martin Veneberg.
Veneberg. Is that the novelist who made such a big splash about, 20 years ago?
The same. The self-styled genius of Chicago's literati, who wrote two smash sellers back in the 30s and hasn't been heard from since. Not until yesterday, that is.
And what happened yesterday?
Well, at the height of his heyday, he bought a $25,000 paid-up trust policy from us. We had a request from him yesterday asking for some change of beneficiary form.
Oh, what's so unusual about that?
Nothing except that his wife's the present beneficiary. And the Chicago police have been looking for her ever since Vandenberg was murdered last night.
Wow. Might be a good idea to brush up on my reading at that.
Mind if I break in here to ask you a question? Here it is. How much do you know about your United States government? For example, do you know what the work of the Department of Agriculture entails? Somebody, someday, may recommend that the Department of Agriculture be called the Department of General Scientific Progress, because employees of this branch of our government have been responsible for the improvement of our shoe leather, our mattress stuffing, and the rubber tires which we put on our automobiles. But these improvements are somewhat of a sideline, since the main duty of the department is to assist the farmers of America. Now, back in the days when it was just getting organized and explaining to Congress why it needed more money, the Department of Agriculture acted only as a sort of clearinghouse for information which farmers picked up and passed on about better ways to grow corn, raise pigs, and so on. Then, the farmers began asking questions about getting rid of blight and parasites and other such farming problems, and the department had to come up with the right answer. That's when the department began to expand and take a direct part in improving farm operations. As an example of its success in farming improvements, there's the item of egg production. In the past 50 years, the production of eggs has been increased over 300% as a result of the expert advice on the feeding and raising of poultry developed by workers in the Department of Agriculture. Other important developments have been made by the department's chemists, such as the improvement of insect killers, fertilizers, and the discovery of new ways in which to use products which farmers have been growing since the beginning of time. For example, do you know it is now possible to make mucilage from sweet potatoes, paper from corn stalks, paintbrushes from milk, and wood as strong as steel? These are just a few of the advancements made by the Department of Agriculture. Future advancements will add much to our American way of life.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Washingtonian Life Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the frustrated Phoenix matter. Expense account item 1, $63.30. Airfare and incidentals between Hartford and Chicago. Expense account item 2, $1.20. Cab fare from the Sherman House to the editorial offices of the Daily Examiner. I figured a quick brush-up on Martin Veneberg's recent history might come in handy. But as it happened, I didn't get past the city editor's desk.
Sure, you can use the more dollar. Might have a better idea for you, though.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Have a talk with Richard Hanley.
Who is Hanley?
Freelance literary critic and columnist. We buy a lot of his stuff. He can tell you everything that's in the morgue and then some.
Sounds like he knew Veneberg pretty well.
Yeah, he was his disciple, friend, father confessor, and psychiatric social worker, for 20 years.
That sounds like a pretty good recommendation.
If you can find Vandenberg's wife, she could give you a better one.
Oh, how's that?
Hanley was her first husband.
Expense account item 3, $1.35. Cab fare to Richard Hanley's modern studio apartment on Elm Street. The severe functional appearance of the studio seemed to be reflected in Richard Hanley.
Which Martin Vandenberg did you want me to tell you about, Mr. Dollar, the man or the writer?
There's a difference?
As a writer, he'd been touched by the gift of genius. As a man, he was dissolute, depraved, contemptible.
Would you mind explaining that, Mr. Hanley?
In 1933 and 34, he published two of the greatest novels ever written. They burst upon the muck heap of the creative writing of the times like twin comets blazing a pathway to the stars. For the next 20 years, he drowned that brilliant light in a foul sea of alcohol dissipation and moral dissolution. In short, the Martin Vandenberg who was killed last night, Mr. Dollar, was a drunken bum.
I was told that you were a friend of Vandenberg's. Seems I was misinformed.
For 20 years, I have been trying to get that man to write again, write as I knew he could, as he'd done before. I nursed him through his alcoholic stupors, counseled him, pleaded with him, even financed him for a year or two.
And how did he react?
Well, the vows were many, the accomplishments nil. Whatever I gave him, he used to sate his appetite for dissipation.
Well, 20 years is a long time to spend in the face of all that. Not to mention the loss of your wife.
I hadn't contemplated giving him Helene, too, Mr. Dollar.
Mm-hmm. Where is she now?
I have no idea. I'd finally given up on Vandenberg some 5 weeks ago. I haven't seen either of them since.
Well, anything else you can tell me, Mr. Hanley? Any ideas as to who might have killed him or why?
No. He had no personal possession. Possibly no longer even a talent for anyone to be jealous of. I can't conceive of any possible motives, Mr. Dollar.
Well, there's always that $25,000 insurance policy. I walked over to the Chicago Avenue police station and introduced myself to Lieutenant Vorschach, who was in charge of the investigation.
For what it's worth, here's what we got on it, Dollar. Vandenberg was killed in the one-room rat nest he called home by two .25 caliber bullets fired at close range. Ballistics just classified the gun for red automatic. Time of death was approximately 11 p.m. last night. Nobody heard the shots. Nobody saw anybody come in or out. Nobody knows any reason why Vandenberg should have been killed.
Who discovered the body, Lieutenant?
A man by the name of Dalton Towler. Seems to be an old friend of Vandenberg. Strictly a screwball bohemian type, you know.
What time did he come across it?
3 o'clock this morning.
Unusual hour for him to come calling, wasn't it?
Well, not according to Towler. It seems he was working on some earth-shattering poems at home. He finished them and tore right over to show them to Vandenberg. According to him, the womb of night is the birthplace of genius, and time is an artificial dungeon created by benighted Philistines in which to imprison men's souls. Unquote.
That's very descriptive, but not very illuminating.
Well, the same could be said about everything else about this case so far. Until we came across that insurance policy, we had a blank right down the line.
You figure that's the motive for Vandenberg's murder?
That's the only one that even looks close.
What about the wife, Helene?
Yeah, that's got us beat, too. As far as we can find out, she disappeared 5 days ago. Nobody in the neighborhood's seen or heard of her since. We got an APB out on her, though. We'll pick her up sooner or later.
Mm-hmm. Anything in Vandenberg's recent actions to give us a lead?
Well, one unusual thing popped up. Don't know if it means anything, though.
Yeah, what's that?
We found a nearly new portable typewriter up in his room. Clean, oiled, ready to go. The neighbors tell us that for the past week, Martin Vandenberg has been writing again. Only we couldn't find a scrap of manuscript.
Well, there wasn't much more Vorschach could tell me. Vandenberg's history during the past 10 years was summed up on the police blotter. Arrest for drunkenness, vagrancy, disorderly conduct. And the coroner's jury would write the epitaph. Homicide at the hands of person or persons unknown. I found Dalton Towler where his landlady said he would be, in Newberry Park. One square block of tired grass and scraggly bushes in the midst of a dreary section of Chicago's near north side. Towler was addressing a couple of dispirited-looking squirrels.
Come, you beady-eyed scavengers seeking the humorous fruit of the goober. There are no gleanings here save those unpalatable ones scraped from the moldering refuse of the ash heaps called the mines of men.
Do you think the squirrels understand that?
Oh, far better, perhaps, than the two-legged protoplasmic dullards who stalk the earth under the guise of Homo sapiens.
Well, I have to take your word for that, Mr. Towler.
A unilateral knowledge of identity, which indicates you have the advantage of me, sir.
Well, my name is Dollar. I'm an insurance investigator.
In other words, a brazen delver into the secrets of man?
I'd like to ask you a few questions about Martin Veneberg.
Yes. A final degradation of genius. To be dissected piecemeal upon the cold, impersonal autopsy slab of a park bench.
All I want to do is find out who killed him and why.
An impossible task, sir. You ignore the simple fact that Martin Veneberg is not dead.
That's not what the police records say.
An abysmal conclusion, reached by pygmy-minded illiterates. A soul such as that of Martin Veneberg can never die. It will rise again from the ashes of its mortal remains like that fabled bird, the phoenix, and soar on glorious wings of deathless prose forevermore.
Well, let's get back to the police blotter and sordid realism, shall we?
Very well, sir. What do you wish from me?
Any information you can give me about who might have wanted to kill Martin Veneberg?
Their names are legion, sir.
How's that, Mr. Teller?
Any of the incompetent, the jealousy-ridden, the hacks who spew out their clumsy, illy-informed words could have killed Veneberg cheerfully out of sheer, frustrated envy.
Well, I'm looking for a little more practical motive.
Well, what more practical motive could there be, sir? Worldly goods? These he had none.
What about his wife?
A ridiculous implication.
Why?
Helene is a lovely soul, one who worshipped at Veneberg's shrine, who was dedicated selflessly to her tireless task of catering to his genius.
I can think of 25,000 reasons why she might get tired of it.
Sure you're not referring to that insurance policy?
Well, it supplies motive. Helene's disappeared. Unless she turns up fast with an airtight alibi, it looks pretty bad for her.
Yeah, I'd never considered it in that light before.
Well, now that you have, how does it look?
Would it be of any assistance to her if I were to inform you where she was last night?
It might.
You realize, of course, that my antipathy towards the minions of the law prevented me from divulging this sooner. But if it might be of possible aid to
Where
her...
was she, Fowler?
Where she'd been every evening for the past month. Typing manuscripts, sir. At the apartment of Richard Handley.
Yes, that's right, Dollar. Helene has been coming here evenings to type my column for me.
How did you forget to mention that little fact earlier?
My attorney was out of town. I wish to consult with him first.
What about? Helene or yourself?
There have been no official charges made against her, and I've nothing to be concerned about.
Mm-hmm. Where is Helene now?
I can tell you only what I just finished telling Lieutenant Borzak over the phone.
And what was that?
I expect Helene here as usual at 8 o'clock tonight.
No objections if the lieutenant and I are here.
Not at all. My attorney will be here, too.
Do you mind telling me what time Helene left here last night?
It was a little past midnight.
Are you sure about the time?
Just as certain as you are that Veneberg was killed at approximately an hour before then.
Well, he got an alibi ready, too. You seem to have thought of everything, Mr. Hanley.
Under the circumstances, I thought it a reasonable thing to do.
Expense account item 4, 65 cents. Cab fare to the Chicago Avenue police station. I just paid off the driver and was heading for the entrance when Vorschach came hurrying down the stairs toward a squad car parked at the curb.
Oh, Dollar, you got here just in time. Come on, file in.
Yeah, sure, Lieutenant. What's up?
A break on the Veneberg case.
You picked up Helene?
No, but this might be better. County Hospital, Joe. Some woman took an overdose of sleeping pills with an old picture of Veneberg's in her hand. A personally autographed copy of one of his books was on the bed table beside her. Sound interesting?
Yeah, maybe. What are you holding out, Lieutenant?
They found a .25 caliber Beretta automatic under her pillow.
You know, many great men have attained the highest office in our land, the presidency of the United States. Can you guess the name of this man? He rose to the presidency through successful careers as lawyer, army officer, and statesman. Though President Garfield offered him a cabinet position, he turned it down to become a senator from Ohio. Later, as president, he recommended the annexation of Hawaii. But his term expired before the bill could be acted on. He also helped the admission of North and South Dakota, Montana, Washington, Idaho, and Wyoming as states. If you don't have his name by now, here's another clue. In 1890, he signed a bill giving pensions to American war veterans. Who was he? Benjamin Harrison, 23rd President of the United States. His life is part of your American heritage.
And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. The run out to Wood Street and Cook County Hospital took us approximately 12 minutes. One of the interns on duty at the emergency entrance gave us a briefing in one of the admittance rooms.
Here's all we've got on her. It isn't much. She only came in about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, we know. What's the dope on?
Yeah, Jane Doe, white, female, American, about 30 years of age. Reported symptoms, overdose of barbiturate. Stomach comatose condition, pulse, respiration, blood pressure normal. Stomach contents removed, stimulant administered hypodermically, patient temporarily in 312. Yeah, there's the highlights, gentlemen.
Uh-huh.
Seem to be a few discrepancies, Lieutenant.
Now, the normal pulse, blood pressure, and respiration, huh?
They don't fit in with my ideas about the symptoms of barbiturate poisoning.
They very definitely don't. I'd say the odds are about 10 to 1 that the lab report will show stomach contents to be normal.
Uh-huh. Well, let's have a look at her, Dollar.
Martin, darling. Forgive me, Martin. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to do it, Martin. But it's all right now, darling. We'll be together again.
We'd like to ask you a few questions, miss.
No. Go away. Leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Oh, Martin. Martin, darling. Martin.
I'm a police officer, Miss Lieutenant Vorschach.
Police officer?
And this is Johnny Dollar, insurance investigator.
I don't care what you are. Now go away, please. Go away. And leave me here with my memories of Martin.
What was Martin Veneberg to you?
He was my one and only true love. I worshipped at the shrine of his genius. Life isn't worth living without him. He was the shining beacon that was my one and only guiding light.
Are you sure that shining beacon isn't the spotlight at that grindhouse on North Clark Street?
What are you talking about?
You're Dolly Darling, aren't you? The one who's billed as the tempestuous sweetheart of Terpsichorean delights?
So what? What's that got to do with my love for Martin Veneberg?
You better be able to prove it.
What do I got to prove? It's enough for me that him and me were secret lovers. What right have you got to come around prying into a person's secret life?
Well, there happen to be a few laws concerning attempted suicide, Miss Darling.
Laws? You mean that there's a law?
Not to mention a few about filing a false crime report.
Now, wait a minute. I didn't do nothing wrong.
You better start talking, Miss Darling.
That low-down, dirty, stinking Sammy Farwell.
Your press agent?
Yeah. It was his idea. I told him it was nuts that we couldn't get away with it, but no. He's got himself delusions. The greatest gimmick since Barnum, he says. So look what happens. I get myself in a jam in this lousy pill factory. Got to wrestle with a stomach pump yet, and for what? What am I going to get out of it now?
Probably 30 to 90 days, depending on the judge.
Back at the Chicago Avenue station, Vorschach went through the routine on Dolly Darling and her publicity agent, Sam Farwell. It turned out just about as we expected.
Well, there it is, Dollar. Ballistics clears the .25 caliber Beretta they had planted as a prop for the publicity stunt.
Mm-hmm. Any previous arrests?
A couple of lewd performances for Dolly, some old ones for Farwell, dissemination of pornographic literature, assaults, no conviction. Veneberg's name doesn't show in either package, so.
Well, it doesn't help much in the little matter of who killed him, does it?
And I'm waiting for Helene Veneberg to do that.
Expect her to show up at Hanley's tonight?
Yeah, it could be.
And if she doesn't?
Well, we got a tail on Hanley. He might lead us to her. If not, our APB will pick her up eventually.
Maybe.
You don't sound very convinced.
I guess I'm just not the optimistic type. I spent the rest of the day covering the bars, bookie joints, and assorted dives on the near north side that had been notoriously frequented by Martin Veneberg. I wound up in Dalton Towler's neighborhood no wiser than when I started. I figured I had nothing to lose by paying a little social call.
I take it, Mr. Dollar, that your visit has no connection with whatever impression my charm, wit, and brilliance may have had upon you earlier today.
Well, maybe you're being too modest, Mr. Towler.
Oh, modesty is an attribute only of the mediocre, sir. It is unbecoming in the realm of talent and utterly irreconcilable with genius.
Well, into which category do those poems of yours fall?
Poems, sir?
The ones you were rushing to Martin Veneberg when you found his body.
Oh, they're not worthy of discussion. Insignificant in conception. Puerile in realization. I destroyed them.
Is that what you did with Veneberg's work, too?
Your meaning escapes me, sir.
Veneberg was working on something. The first writing he'd done in 20 years. He'd been at it steadily for a week, but the police didn't find a trace of manuscript. What happened to it, Mr. Towler?
I trust my impression that you're accusing me of having pilfered is erroneous, Mr. Dollar.
You found his body.
True, but I found no such manuscript.
Well, have it your way. But the police are bound to dig up that manuscript sometime.
One moment, sir.
Yeah?
There is something I can tell you.
Well, let's have it.
Martin Veneberg was writing. It was being done under contract to someone. For money.
Who was he writing it for?
So far, I've been unable to ascertain. But he showed me some of it. It was incredible, Mr. Dollar.
Badly written?
Martin Veneberg was utterly incapable of writing even one inferior line, sir. No, it was the contents to which I refer. Indescribable filth. I still find it impossible to believe.
So you took the manuscript and destroyed it?
It's what I would have wished to do. Unfortunately, there was no trace of the manuscript when I arrived there.
Uh-huh. He started writing this stuff just about the time his wife disappeared. Any connection?
A definite one, sir. Helene had stood by him all these years because of her faith that someday he would write again. When he began, and she learned what he was doing, it was impossible for her to bear. She left him.
I suppose that's why he wanted to take her name off that insurance policy.
Such, I believe, was his intention.
Why tell me all this now, Towler?
It was your reference to the police, possibly finding that manuscript.
You're hoping that I'll find it first and destroy it?
If the rebirth of the soaring phoenix that was Martin Veneberg should be frustrated because of that writing, it would be the most heinous of all crimes, Mr. Dollar.
Worse than murder?
In my humble opinion, sir, yes.
It was getting on toward 8 o'clock when I left Towler's, so I called Lieutenant Vorschach to see if he was ready to keep our appointment with Richard Hanley.
We don't have to bother going over there now, Dollar.
Why not, Lieutenant?
We just found Helene Veneberg.
Yeah, where?
In the Chicago River. Floating face down. The preliminary examination shows she died about 12 to 24 hours ago.
Well, the time could match pretty closely with Martin's death.
Yeah, so could the probable cause of death. A couple of small caliber bullet wounds. Too soon for ballistics to identify yet, though.
Uh-huh. Well, what about Richard Hanley?
Right now he's under physician's care. Broke down completely when we gave him the news.
Uh-huh.
It's possible he did it, of course. Jealousy could give him a pretty good motive for Martin's death.
Doesn't tie in with Helene very well, though.
No. That'll be our headache from now on. Well, at least your job's over.
Yeah, it looks like it, but I'm in no hurry.
Oh? You got something on your mind?
Two things. A missing manuscript and a .25 caliber Beretta.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe I got the gun figured, so let's try the manuscript first, huh?
Well, Veneberg was writing again. According to Towler, it was the kind of literature they sell in back rooms and dark alleys.
Yeah.
Towler thinks somebody who peddles that stuff gave him a commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, that starts to tie in with the gun pattern at that, doesn't it?
Somebody knew enough to use a Beretta as the plant in that publicity stunt of Dolly Darling's. Even ballistics didn't know the tight gun that had killed Venneberg until maybe an hour before. That's on pornographic literature.
The only thing missing seems to be a motive.
Why don't we drop over to Dolly Darling's press agent and see if we can find one? The offices of Sammy Farwell, publicist, were located on the third floor of an old office building on North Wells Street.
311.
Down that way.
Yeah. Come on, Dollar. Farwell, open up, police officers. Open up!
Better break it down. Oh, wait a minute.
Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the sacrificial ceremony.
Dollar. Something's burning in that wastebasket.
Pray do not trouble yourselves, gentlemen. It's much too late. The last works of Martin Venneberg have already been reduced to ashes.
Where's Farwell?
In the inner office, sir. Oh, no need for haste. He's quite incapable of leaving there under his own locomotion.
Looks like Towler's right.
Yeah. There's the Beretta he used.
I trust you agree that this is a most satisfactory evening's work, gentlemen.
All right, Dollar, let's hear about it.
But of course, Lieutenant. I must confess I feel quite proud of myself for what has just transpired.
You knew Farwell had killed Martin and Helene?
Not his actual identity, no. But there had been word around of a violent disagreement over the unwelcome attentions Martin's sponsor was paying to Helene. It obviously ended in the shooting. Then he disposed of Helene later as a possible witness.
Why didn't you come to the police with this?
My dear Lieutenant, it was only the manuscript that was of concern to me. It was vital that I get to it before you did. And not until Mr. Dollar departed my humble abode did I learn Farwell's identity through the good offices of an old confrere.
So you came up here, shot him, and burned the script?
In essence, yes. There was a bit of disagreement involving that gun in there.
Yeah.
No need to appear so disconsolate, Mr. Dollar. I would say that all in all, when the phoenix does eventually rise from the ashes, he will agree that things have turned out quite well.
Expense account item 5, $19.40. Hotel bill and miscellaneous. Expense account item 6, $67.60. Airfare and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $153.50. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. As Johnny Dollar.
Jim Bates, Johnny.
Oh, hiya, Jim.
Johnny, when a chief of police gets shot and killed, what would you say is the most likely reason for it?
Well, most likely because he's a chief of police.
Right. Only I've got a hunch on this one.
Like what, Jim?
The insured the chief was middle-aged, shot to death with his own gun in his own house. The beneficiary, his wife, is 27. They've been married 8 months. The policy's been in force 7 months. The face value is $50,000. And the wife filed a claim on it only 24 hours after he was killed.
Well, fast girl. She didn't waste any time.
What do you think, Johnny?
Same thing you do. Maybe I'd better look into it.
How about taking a minute or so to talk about seals and fish that have some connection with the government of the United States? Now, that isn't as strange as it sounds. You take the matter of seals, for example. There are 2 types of seals that are the responsibility of the Secretary of State. First, there's the Great Seal of the United States, which is stamped on all official documents. The Secretary of State makes sure it's always on hand when it's needed. The other kind of seals he takes care of are the ones that swim in the ocean, since it's up to the Secretary to work out agreements with representatives of other countries and let them know how many seals can be caught in what is called international waters and when. The Secretary of State works out similar deals for the catching of fish and lobsters because these agreements are actually treaties. Before they can be put into effect, they have to be approved by 2/3 of the Senate. As a matter of fact, any time our government wants to work out a deal with a foreign country on trade, mutual assistance, fish, seals, or lobsters, it's done by treaty. And all treaties are signed by the President, though some of them aren't drawn up until after the Secretary of State has worked over the rough spots in order to pave the way for prompt ratification. So, just remember, the Secretary of State is a mighty important wheel in the machinery of your United States government.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Commonwealth Mutual Assurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Dan Frank matter. Expense account item 1, $76.40. Transportation to the Great Lakes town of Middleborough and taxi to the home of Dan Frank, former chief of police, now deceased. It was a rambling 2-story house, well-trimmed hedges, smooth lawn, quiet neighborhood, good place to live. And the last place you'd think of as a setting for murder. I was halfway up the walk when a man came out the front door, down the steps, and then stopped and waited for me, rocking on his heels.
A copper. I can tell him a block away. You're a copper, right?
Wrong.
Private eye, maybe?
Oh, you're getting warmer. Insurance investigator.
Insurance. That's what I just asked her about, and she threw me out. Said I was drunk. She was right. I am. Usually am. A little bit. Pete Parker, Daily Herald.
Johnny Dollar. Glad to know you.
Insurance. He had some or you wouldn't be here. And who gets it? Laura, of course, his ever-loving little wife. Only question left, how much?
No comment.
I like you, Johnny. You don't talk too much. I do. Let me give you a little advice. Watch yourself.
Meaning what?
This town, it looks sleepy, dead. Don't let it fool you. It's wide open. Rackets, everything. A guy could get hurt.
What about Dan Frank? Was he in on these rackets?
Johnny, the police chief here gets $6,000 a year. Take a look at that house. Go in and take a look at Laura. Even more expensive. Dan was in.
He's out now, though. Be seeing you, Pete.
Right, do that. I'm always around Pete Parker, that drunk that works for the Herald. Ask anybody.
Well? Mrs. Franks?
Yes?
Johnny Dollar is my name. I'm representing the insurance company.
Oh, come in, Mr. Dollar. I hardly expected them to pay so promptly.
I'm not here to pay you, Mrs. Frank. I'm an investigator. The company wants a little more information about your husband's death.
Why? I told them everything in the claim I sent.
I know, but there are always a few
They're
details.
trying to get out of it. I know how those companies operate.
Oh, you've had experience with them before?
No, of course I haven't. But what information? What is it you want to know, Mr. Dollar?
Well, how it happened, for one thing.
Right here. This is where he fell. His gun was laying beside him. Someone had taken it from the table there by the door and waited for him to come down the stairs.
Middle of the night, wasn't it? Why did he come downstairs?
I'd heard a noise. I woke him up, and he came down to see about it.
Mm-hmm. Were the lights on?
Not down here. I turned on the hall light upstairs and done the shots. 4 or 5 of them. Someone ran out the front door.
And got away without being seen?
Yes.
Who do you think that someone was, Mrs. Frank?
I don't know. Dan had a lot of enemies, of course, because of his job. But
What about his friends? You suppose they could have done it?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, who were his friends? Who heads up the rackets here in Middleborough?
What racket?
Okay. Without your cooperation, though, it's going to take a lot longer to get this settled.
Tell me something. Does the insurance company think I'm the one who killed him?
Well, I think 24 hours is pretty fast for a grief-stricken widow to shoot a claim into the office.
I'm not grief-stricken, Mr. Dollar.
So I've noticed.
You go see Max Bealey. Talk to him.
Max Bealey?
The city attorney. Get his story before you jump to conclusions. See if he thinks I'm guilty.
All right, I will.
Then we'll talk. Afterward. Maybe I'll even cooperate. Maybe you will be a little nicer to me.
Sure, I'll tell you why she sent you to me. So I could tell you she didn't kill him. That she couldn't possibly have killed him.
Why not, Mr. Bealey? Late at night, the two of them alone in the house. The chief shot with his own gun. That mysterious prowler story has been used before.
Yeah, I know. But you're wrong about one thing. They weren't alone in the house. I was there.
Oh?
You see, Dan and I were leaving early in the morning on a fishing trip, so I was staying all night. I woke up and heard somebody in the hall outside my room. About the time I opened the door, Laura snapped on the hall lights. Just then, the shots blasted downstairs. She was standing in the door of her room, not 10 feet away. She couldn't have done it.
No, apparently not. She sure couldn't have had a better alibi. The city attorney himself. Were you and Dan Frank good friends, Mr. Bealey?
No, we didn't have much use for each other.
Well, then why were you...
I know. I was spending the night in his house, and we were going fishing together. You're thinking maybe I needed that alibi as much as Laura does.
Well, it does work both ways, Mr. Bealey.
No motive.
Laura could be a motive. She's a beautiful girl. A lot younger than her husband, I understand. About your age, in fact.
Again. I know her too well. Sure, she's a knockout, wild honeysuckle and a handful of stars, but inside there's a little cash register bell, and when you put money in, it rings real pretty. And when you don't, nothing. Dan found out.
Is that why he got mixed up with the rackets here?
Sure, he needed dough to... You do get around, don't you? Who told you there were any rackets here?
Max, I wonder if you'd go over that... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you...
Oh, come on in, Commissioner. This is Johnny Dollar, insurance investigator. He's checking into Dan's killing.
A terrible loss.
Commissioner Corbett, Mr. Dollar.
How do you do?
How are you?
If there's any way at all we can help, Mr. Dollar, just speak out. The entire facilities of City Hall are completely at your disposal, sir.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. Just what is the theory on the shooting?
Find Eddie Sales and you've got the killer.
Eddie Sales?
And Chief Frank sent him up a couple of years ago. Eddie swore he'd get him if it was the last thing he did. Eddie was paroled last week. Seen here in town the morning before the killing. Hasn't been seen since. We've combed the town for a week. No luck.
Well, it seems to add up. Would Mrs. Frank know anything about the rackets her husband was tied up with?
Rackets? Why, that's...
No, Commissioner. He's been talking to people. Found out our fair city's not as lily white as it looks.
Oh. Well, then there's no point in trying to cover it up. It's true, Mr. Dollar. Unpleasant as it is to admit it.
Any idea who's back of them?
Not enough to talk about. If I did, I'd be talking about it in court.
Find Eddie Sales, Mr. Dollar. That's the key to both the killing and the rackets. Find Eddie, and you can wind this up in 10 minutes.
Expense account item 2, $1.50. Taxi from City Hall back to my hotel. I kept trying to make sense out of what I'd learned, but got nowhere. Everybody blamed Eddie Sales, the ex-con with a grudge. Only Eddie wasn't around. Thanks. Well, I still wasn't any closer to an answer when I got out at the hotel. I watched the taxi pull away and then started across the walk toward the entrance. It was Laura Frank, parked at the curb a few yards away.
I've been waiting for you, Johnny.
Oh, have you?
I wanted to talk to you. Why don't you get in?
Okay.
Did you talk to Max?
Yeah. He gives you a pretty strong alibi.
I could have told you myself, but you'd have checked with him anyway.
Yeah, I imagine I would have.
You're not being any nicer, Johnny.
Is that what you wanted to talk about?
Maybe. I'm ready to be nicer.
Oh? And how about cooperative?
That too, Johnny.
And tell me why you didn't mention Eddie Sales when I talked to you earlier.
Why should I? I don't know that it was Eddie. I suppose it was. Everybody's sure of it. But I don't know it was him.
I see.
Forget him, Johnny. If the police can't find him when they know the town inside out, it's a sin shooting.
Get down, quick. Are you all right?
Yes, I guess I am. Why, Johnny? Why would they want to kill you?
How do you know it was me they were shooting at?
No.
Something to think about, isn't it? Do you feel any more cooperative?
I've got to get out of here, Johnny. I'll talk to you later. I've got to get out of here.
Waiter? Yes, sir? Another scotch and soda. How about you, Johnny?
Well, thanks, Pete. Not right now.
Oh, I forgot to ask. How did you find me?
Called the paper. They gave me the names of 3 bars. I was lucky on the first try.
A reputation is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Well, Johnny, what else you want to know?
More about Laura Frank?
Why? She's got an alibi.
I know.
And somebody tried to knock her off a couple of hours ago.
Not necessarily. She could have been setting me up for that one.
Possible.
Huh?
Hey, Arthur. Oh, thanks. Laura Frank hates champagne, but always orders it. It costs more. A pink and gold doll and spangled tights. A 4-star tramp. Ex-dancer at the Cosmo Club. Ex-girlfriend of Eddie Sales until Dan...
Girlfriend of Eddie Sales?
Oh, sure. Sure, hadn't you heard about it? That's why Eddie swore he'd get Dan. Claimed he was being framed. Maybe he was. Maybe Laura suggested it to Dan. Eddie had done all he could for her by then.
Why do you hate her, Pete?
It's quite the contrary, Johnny. I'm in love with her. Always will be. She was my girl before she met Eddie Sales.
Oh.
Oh, waiter. It's a screwy case any way you look at it, Johnny. That gun, for instance. I guess you heard?
No. What about it?
Well, they found it lying beside Dan's body. His own gun. So, of course, they assumed he shot it out with the killer. It was 2 days before the lab woke up and realized he'd been shot with his own gun. Hadn't used it at all.
Excuse me, Mr. Parker. There's a call for you. I'll plug the phone in here.
Oh, thanks.
There you are, sir.
Pete Parker. What? Oh, yeah, sure, I'll cover it. Oh, yeah, right away. It's a 3-alarm fire, Johnny. Laura Frank's place. Flames 50 feet high. They can't get inside.
You know, many great men have attained the highest office in our land, the presidency of the United States. Can you guess the name of this man? The son of a president, he served his country as diplomat, lawmaker, and Secretary of State before becoming president himself. His excellence as a speaker won for him the nicknames of Old Man Eloquent and the Walking Vocabulary. In his first message to Congress as president in 1824, he recommended a program of national improvements, including the building of highways, canals, a national university, and federal weather observatories. He was also responsible for the Smithsonian Institute. If you don't have his name by now, here are 2 more clues. During his presidency, the Erie Canal was completed, and the first passenger railroad was built. Who was he? John Quincy Adams, 6th President of the United States. His life is part of your American heritage.
And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account item 3, $6.20. Refreshments for Pete Parker of the Daily Herald. And taxi to Laura Frank's house in the suburbs. Marked now by a pillar of flames visible for blocks. The whole outside shell of the house was blazing, and the firemen couldn't do much of anything but try to keep it from spreading and hold back the crowd that had collected on the street and lawn.
It's terrible, Mr. Dollar. Simply terrible. A total loss.
Yeah, it looks that way.
What about Laura, Commissioner? Where's Laura Frank?
Oh, she's all right, Pete. Got out before it really caught. She's over there in the car with Max Feely.
Where? Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see you later, Commissioner. You coming, Pete?
Yeah, right with you.
A terrible thing. Just terrible.
Pardon me, please. Come on, let us through, please. Pardon us, please. Come on.
Johnny, you were right. It was me they were after, and now they've tried again.
Yeah, could be. Oh, hiya, Mr. Bealey.
Well, another one for you, Mr. Dollar. The house is insured, too.
Oh, it was awful. I came home and lay down on the sofa, and I guess I dropped off to sleep. I woke up with flames all around me. I was just lucky to get out.
You've always been lucky, Laura.
Pete, I can get along without any remarks from you.
Sure you can, baby. You're getting along real fine. Too bad the car wasn't in the garage. Then all your assets will be converted to cash. Nice, green, bloody cash.
Shut up, you drunken fool. Go away from here and leave me alone.
Why? You can afford me now.
Get out. Get out of here before I do
Take it easy, both of you.
I'm sorry. Lost my head.
How do you figure, Mr. Dollar? I mean the fire. Eddie's sales?
Well, it kind of looks that way. He got Dan Frank a week ago and came back and tried for Laura tonight.
Where the devil's he been hiding out, though? I've gone over this town foot by foot.
Hard to tell.
That came from the house.
Ammunition, maybe. The chief probably has some...
There's somebody coming out by the cellar door.
He's carrying a gun.
Look, he's fallen on the ground. Come on.
How can anybody come out of that alive? Let's get him turned over. Come on. Easy now.
Good Lord.
You know him?
It's the boy we've been looking for, Mr. Dollar. Eddie Sales.
Well, I don't know. I can't promise anything, gentlemen. That shot may bring him to for a few minutes, or it may not. He's badly burned.
What are his chances of coming through it alive, Dr. Redmond?
Not 1 in 1,000, Commissioner. He may hang on for a day or two, and he might become conscious for a short while and be able to talk. But as far as pulling through, not a chance, really.
Well, there's no point in me staying here any longer. If he does talk, you can get his statement, Max. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr.
Good night, Ladner.
Yeah, the whole answer, Mr. Dollar. Right there on that bed. And we may never find out what it was.
I can't figure those shots. He fired them before he came out of the blaze. He wasn't trying to shoot anyone, apparently.
He couldn't even see anyone, burned the way he was.
I'm going up to the dispensary and get some more plasma. I'll be back in a few minutes.
But how do you figure it, Johnny? That Eddie started the fire?
Well, there's no other way to figure it, Pete. But if he did, it's funny he got caught in his own trap.
Yeah, he started it all right. And he shot Dan. Now he's paying for it. But it looks like we're not going to find out who's behind the racket.
Hey, wait a second. He's trying to say something.
Who double-crossed you, Eddie? Hey, Eddie, can you hear me?
No. Well, he still can't make it.
That may be as close as he'll ever come. Oh, I'll get it. Hello? Oh, yeah, just a second. To you, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, thanks. Johnny Dollar.
Me, Johnny.
Oh?
I've got to talk to you right away.
All right, talk.
On the phone, Johnny. I'm across the street from the hospital. It's an all-night lunchroom. Can you come over here?
I guess so.
Right away?
Yeah, right away. So long. Pete.
Yeah, Johnny. What is it?
That was Laura. She wants me to meet her across the street. Stay here and keep an eye on things, will you, Pete?
Sure, go ahead.
Here, Johnny. Over here in the booth.
Now, what's in your mind, Mrs. Frank?
Sit down, Johnny. Come on.
Thanks. You had to talk to me right away. Well?
Look at me, Johnny. I'm not so bad, am I?
In looks, you mean? Oh, no. You're a pink and gold doll. A handful of stars. That's what a couple of guys said today. And I guess it fits.
I don't care what a couple of guys said. What do you say, Johnny?
You look great, Mrs. Frank. Terrific. Now, if you'll excuse me...
No, wait. Johnny, I'm in the clear on this. You know that. The night my husband was killed, I've got an alibi nobody could shake, right?
Well, I'm convinced that you didn't pull the trigger, if that's what you mean.
And you could convince the insurance company, too, if you would. We could have this over and settled.
Yeah, they'd go pretty much on my report.
Why don't you be nice and turn in a real good report?
Well, we get some answers first, Mrs. Frank. Straighten out some of the coincidences. Like the fact that you heard the noise and woke up, that you sent Chief Frank downstairs, and you turned on the upstairs light behind him and made a perfect target out of him. Let's hear what Eddie Sales has to say before I file a report.
Suppose Eddie dies without talking.
Well, in that case, you probably will be in the clear. And now, if you'll excuse
Johnny,
me...
I'll give you $10,000. Make that report. Now.
You are anxious, aren't you?
I just want to get it settled and out of the way.
Pete.
Johnny, one of the firemen I know just came by the hospital. They found out why Eddie Sales fired those shots. The cellar door was padlocked on the outside. He shot the lock off to get out.
And Eddie didn't set the fire. He was locked in the basement. So he was the one who was supposed to die in it. Right, Mrs. Frank?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, what did you want to see me about, Johnny?
See you about?
Oh, yeah. You just phoned the hospital and said to come right over here, that you wanted to see me.
Come on, Pete. Let's get back over there. That's why she wanted to talk to me. To get me away from that room.
Oh, the elevator's coming down now.
Eddie's the big threat. If he comes to and knows he's finished, he'll probably talk his head off.
Here it is.
We get there before... Well, leaving, Mr. Bealey?
Yeah. Somebody phoned. The commissioner wants me to meet him across the street.
Is there anybody up there with Eddie?
Well, no, not right now. The doctor will be back in a few minutes, though.
Come on.
Look, I've got to meet the
Shut
commissioner.
the doors, Pete.
Well, what's going on here? Look, I haven't got time to go back upstairs.
I think you'd better take time, Mr. Bealey.
Well, it's all right. Eddie wasn't showing any signs of coming to.
I'll bet he wasn't.
All right, let's go.
Now, look, you mind letting me in on this, Mr. Dollar?
Let's go down to that room and take a look at Eddie first.
What happened to that policeman they had on duty?
I was here in the hall when I left.
He might have walked down to the... Did you leave that door open, Mr. Bealey?
No.
Come on.
What the devil?
Are we interrupting anything, Commissioner?
What are you doing with that pillow?
Well, nothing. Nothing at all.
You were holding it down over Eddie's face. You were trying... He's dead. You smothered him.
He was dead when I came in. I was just moving the pillow.
Did you have to get us all out of the hospital and send the police guard away just to move a pillow?
Mr. Dollar, surely you're not suggesting that...
Well, I'm suggesting it. Corbett, I've known for a year that you were back of the rackets here, but I didn't have any way of proving it.
Until now? Is that what you mean, Max? Hold it right where you are.
That gun isn't your answer, Commissioner. There are three of us, and you can't get us all.
Stay back, Dollar.
Why did you have Dan Frank killed? He was one of your boys.
I can tell you, Mr. Dollar. Dan was going to pull out, spill the whole business, give me names and facts. That was the reason for the fishing trip. Laura must have tipped off Corbett. Eddie Sales was in town and already had a grudge against the chief. It was real convenient.
That's right, Max. Real convenient.
Then Eddie hid out in the basement of Laura's house until she decided she'd feel safer if he were dead. Until she locked the basement door and burned the house down tonight.
Laura was a weak link. That's why we tried to knock her off this afternoon.
Come on, you better give me the gun, Corbett.
Stay back.
You better do as he says, Commissioner.
I'm warning you, Dollar. Don't come any closer. Stay where you are, or I'll... Let go of it. Stop it. Let go of it.
Watch it. He's making for the window.
Hit him off.
You'll never stop me from...
got out of being prosecuted.
We don't have any defendants left, Max.
Laura.
Eddie Sales is dead, Commissioner Corbett, and Dan, too. No witnesses and nobody to prosecute.
He still has you, Mrs. Frank. Accomplice to murder.
Johnny, no witnesses.
She's right, Mr. Dollar. I couldn't build a case against her. With this, you can. With what? Well, she intended it to be an insurance claim, but it's actually a confession. All signed and witnessed.
What are you talking about?
It's all filled out with a complete story of what happened. It says, we found my husband's body at the foot of the stairs. He'd been shot and killed with his own gun. Dollar, I don't quite see what... This claim was in the main office of the insurance company less than 24 hours after Dan Frank was killed. But the police didn't find out he'd been shot with his own gun until 2 days later. How did you know it, Mrs. Frank? Expense account item 4, $110.80. Hotel, incidentals, and transportation back to Hartford. Expense account total, $194.90. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
For your listening enjoyment, John Lund as...
Johnny Dollar.
Ralph Wheaton again, Johnny. I'm glad I caught you before you left.
Oh, there's almost 2 hours before my plane leaves. What's on your mind?
Another cable came in from Manila just now. The amount taken in the burglary is roughly $75,000.
That's dollars and not pesos?
Dollars. And they mentioned that a clerk has dropped out of sight.
Oh, a native?
An American. His name is Blake, Daniel Blake.
Blake. All right.
Well, that's all so far. What's your hotel in Manila? Do you know yet?
Yeah, the Hotel Tondo.
Tondo. Good. I'll get word to you there if I learn anything you can use. Good luck on the trip.
Hi, fellas. Care to join me in a quick look at the past? Okay, here goes. Back around 1890, Charles Dudley Warner, who was editor of the Hartford Courant, wrote in an editorial, everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Well, maybe no one did in 1890, but someone definitely has since then. Our United States weatherman. He's quite a busy gentleman who works for the Department of Commerce. His job is to read thermometers, barometers, anemometers, and other assorted meters which forecast weather conditions so the rest of us will know what to plan or what not to plan. Like hanging out the wash or going to a baseball game. Information about weather conditions is also given to aircraft pilots and ship captains so they can plan their flights or cruises accordingly. Of course, they need more than just weather data, and the Commerce Department gives them what they need. For the pilots, the department issues aviation charts and maps and sees to it that air markers are laid out so that the pilots can find their way easily and safely. For the ship captains, the Commerce Department issues nautical charts and tide tables to indicate when and where it will be safe to navigate their ships. The department also inspects the ships to see that they're in perfect operating condition and issues licenses for the operating of the ships. So the next time you look up at the sky and wonder what kind of a day it's going to be, the thought might also cross your mind that many lives and valuable cargo carried by American planes and ships are depending on the United States weatherman who is also looking at the sky.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Columbia All Risk Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Woodward Manila Matter. Expense account item 1, $1,188.75. Airfare and incidentals between Hartford and Manila.
Traffic Passenger dollar from the incoming Pan American flight number 103. Will you go to the ticket office, please?
Of course, sir.
Passenger dollar from the incoming Pan American flight number 103, please. Will you go to the ticket office?
Yes, sir.
My name is Dollar. I was being paged.
Oh, yes. These gentlemen are waiting for you. This is Mr. Dollar, sir.
Oh, yes. I'm Floyd McDonald, Mr. Dollar, local manager for the Woodward Company.
Oh, how are you?
And this is Mr. Irving Morgan, my assistant.
Mr. Morgan?
Glad to meet you. I've made arrangements to have your luggage sent on to your hotel if you'd like to do it that way. And Irving and I can drive you right in.
Oh, fine. This is very nice of you.
Well, I know how it is. At least I don't want to bother with details after a long flight like that.
If you will give me your luggage check, sir.
Oh, yeah. I have them right here.
Thank you.
Well, that's all, I think. The car's right outside. We can give you the details of the burglary on the way in.
McDonald told me very little that I didn't already know. The store he managed, one of Manila's largest hardware stores, was part of the American-owned Woodward chain. He discovered the loss of the $75,000 himself on Monday morning when he'd entered his office and found the safe open.
Naturally, I feel very badly about it, but everything that can be done is being done.
Well, I don't know who the main office is blaming it on, but I think you'll find that Floyd and I were anything but careless. Well, we've got 5 years without a loss behind us to prove that.
Were you in the habit of keeping that much money in your office safe?
Well, it wasn't my idea, nor to my liking. It was because of a company rule. They were worried about conditions on this side of the Pacific and ordered us to stop banking our cash here. Instead of the usual yearly transfer, our money has been going to the States once a month.
I didn't save much this time. Now, what about this clerk, Dan Blake?
Oh, don't get me started on him.
Now, there's nothing proved yet, Irving.
Now, what's it going to take to open your eyes, Floyd?
We don't agree on just what to think about Dan, Mr. Dollar. In spite of the circumstances, I find it almost impossible to believe that Dan would do this to me.
Well, could he have done it?
Of course he could. He had access to the office.
Yes, that's true, but I can't forget that he was a very good friend of mine. He was like a son to me.
Was he in any trouble that you know of? Owe any money?
I hadn't heard of anything.
Well, he's been out of sight 4 days now. What kind of a search has been made for him?
I understand the police have been working very hard. They classify him as the chief suspect, too.
But you got to realize that the Philippines aren't like the States, Dollar. It's not hard to drop out of sight here. It's a big world.
Yeah, I know. I just watched a lot of it pass by. Well, as soon as my luggage arrives and I can get into a fresh suit, I'll contact the police and see what they've got. Expense account item 2, $350, including tip. A pitcher of gimlets delivered to my room. While I waited for my baggage to arrive, I relaxed in front of a window. My hotel was 2 blocks back from Manila's Great Bay, in a section called El Puerto. And from my room, I could see enough of the Orient and the native craft working the harbor to give even a hardware store burglary an atmosphere of intrigue. Expense account item 3, 80 cents, cab fare to police headquarters, where I was shunted into a side office to wait for the sergeant in charge of the Woodward case. He finally showed up.
Sergeant Malvar, you wait for me?
Yes, my name is Dollar.
I know. You come to talk of my burglary. You're a policeman?
No, not quite. I've been hired by an insurance company to learn what I can about it. Have you gotten any place with your search for Dan Blake?
Dan Blake? No, I don't look for him now.
You don't?
No. I have captured the thief.
Oh? Well, who is it?
Miguel Nazaleda.
You've recovered the money?
He will not say where it is yet, but he will say tomorrow, maybe.
Well, what evidence do you have, Sergeant?
He cannot say where he was that night of the burglary.
Is that all?
He is by profession a thief. He was arrested while he was robbing another store last night.
Uh-huh. Does he speak English?
Oh, yes.
I wonder if I could see him. Maybe I could get him to talk.
All right. You come with me. You don't stay long. Only 5 minutes.
That's good enough. Miguel?
Oh, you. Why you come here?
How old are you, Miguel?
50.
Where do you work?
No work. I get hurt in bombing. No work.
Do you have any children?
See. 2 daughters.
Where do they work? Does either one work at the Woodward hardware store?
Work in prison. Both work in prison.
Sergeant Malvar says that you stole some money from the Woodward store.
No.
You make it easier for yourself if you tell the truth and give up the money.
I don't got money. If I got money, then why I steal 5 pesos from auto place? Why? You tell police why. If I got lots of money, why I steal a little more? Why? Because I don't got lots of money.
Well, that's good enough for me, Miguel. Sorry I took up your time.
You don't stay long.
I think he wants to sleep.
What would he say to you?
That he didn't do it.
Bah.
And that if he had, you wouldn't have caught him stealing 5 pesos because he wouldn't have needed it.
He needed a kick in the head for his life.
Do you have any connection between him and the Woodward place?
He tell you he got 2 daughters in prison?
Yeah, he did.
He lies. They come out, but they don't go back to him because he steals their money.
Oh. The daughters have connection with Woodward?
Connection? If we need connection, we find one, all right. Tomorrow, maybe.
I had an idea Sergeant Malvar's philosophy reasoned that it was a lot easier to grill the prisoner than it would be to continue the search for Blake. But I left him to his own devices and cabbed to the Woodward store. I was told that neither Floyd McDonald nor Morgan were in, but that a secretary would help me.
Oh, how do you do, Mr. Dollar? I knew that you were coming out. My name is Charlotte Page. Floyd McDonald is my uncle. He had to go out to Ermita, but can I help you?
Well, I wanted to look at the office to find out where the safe was.
Oh, I can show you. Mr. Dollar, I know you've been here only a little while, but have you learned anything?
Well, not much, but all of it looks bad for Dan Blake.
Oh, I can't believe it. I just can't believe that Dan would do a thing like this.
How well did you know him?
Evidently not well at all if he stole the money. We're the same age. We found something in common working here together. I've had dinner with him occasionally and gone to the beach.
Do you know if he was in any kind of trouble? Deaths or anything?
Well, no. I thought he was very happy and comfortable here. Seemed to be.
Where's his safe now?
Oh, it's under the rug in the desk. You have to lift the corner of the rug.
He knew where it was?
Oh, yes. Everybody trusted him. He's been here for years.
Did he know the combination?
I don't think so. Uncle Floyd handled the cash.
Or could he have memorized it?
I don't know that either. I hadn't given it a thought.
Well, I guess we can put the rug back. I forgot to get his address from the police. Do you happen to know what it is?
Well, I've forgotten. It's on San Pollock. Well, I can find it on the payroll. It'll be right here. Be too easy to find him there, wouldn't it, Mr. Dollar?
Yeah, much too easy. But I might pick up a crumb or two.
Oh, here it is. 307 San Pollock Street.
307. Thanks. Tell Mr. McDonald I was here, would you please, and that I'll be in touch tomorrow? There was a fair biography of Dan Blake in his rooms. I learned that he was born in Duluth, Minnesota, 26 years ago, that his father wrote him occasionally, that he'd sailed with the Merchant Marine during the war and had made a few inter-island trips after that. I made a list of the places he'd visited, but that was all I could do for that day. It wasn't until the next morning that I went to police headquarters and waited again for Sergeant Malvar.
Oh, you come back again. We do very good without your help.
Well, pardon me, I don't want to butt in. I just wondered if you knew that Dan Blake spent a lot of time learning these islands.
Oh?
Did you know that he spent some time in San Jose, on Mindoro, and on Marinduque, and in Palo and Leyte?
I did not know.
Well, I might pay you to check those places. There are more, too. From here, clear down to Mindanao.
The search is finished.
What do you mean?
Dan Blake has been found. He was adrift in a dugout in Tayabas Bay. He was taken aboard the ship, and then he died.
What killed him?
He was shot many times.
Well, what about the money?
It has not been found. Not yet.
Yeah, sure. But maybe tomorrow.
You know, many great men have attained the highest office in our land, the presidency of the United States. Can you guess the name of this man? As a boy, his general health was bad. But as a man, he was a dynamo of energy. He was only 42 when he became president, the youngest man ever to hold that position. His administration was a fairly untroubled one. There was still no income tax. Other taxes were comparatively low, and the United States was in a peaceful era. Conservation of our natural resources was one of his greatest concerns as president, and in 1902 he signed a bill putting the Reclamation Act into action. If you don't have his name by now, here's one more important clue. During his administration, work was begun on the Panama Canal. Who was he? Theodore Roosevelt, 26th President of the United States. His life is part of your American heritage.
And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Sergeant Malvar, Manila Police, was again taking his inimitable approach to a subject, believing what he wanted to believe. When I asked him how he knew the body was that of Dan Blake, he told me the ship captain who had picked him up said so. And how did he know? Well, the man had mentioned the name before he died. That was all. And it wasn't enough for me. I put in a call for Floyd McDonald, the Woodward Company manager, and asked him to meet me at police headquarters for identification.
When did this develop, Dollar, and why wasn't I notified?
Nobody was notified, Mr. McDonald. Sergeant Malvar was playing it close to his chest.
Where is this Sergeant Malvar?
He didn't tell me where he was going. He left word that we could look at the body and then left. My name is Dollar, Corporal.
See, you go in.
Thanks. I know this is unpleasant, but we have to find out.
Good Lord.
Is this Dan Blake?
Yes. Yes, it's Dan. Cover him up, please. Where did they find him?
In a dugout canoe. Someplace called Tayabas Bay, I think.
Yes, Tayabas Bay, southwest of here. Who found him?
A man by the name of Kovar. He's the captain of an inter-island schooner.
Could we leave here?
Sure.
What happened? Do you know?
Well, not firsthand. He'd been shot in the back 4 times. He was alive for a short time after Captain Kovar picked him up. And the money hasn't been found.
I see. Then there's no explanation yet.
Well, not that I know of. The schooner is anchored offshore just south of the Pasig River. You know where that is?
Yes. You're going out to the ship?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to this Kovar. I guess I can hire a boat to take me out there.
Well, I'll drive you down to the docks. As a matter of fact, I'd like to go with you.
Oh, it's a good idea if you have the time.
I'll take the time. That's my car. There.
That must be the boat.
The Sea Nymph, is that the name?
Yeah, that's it. Skipper? Skipper, that's the one there. Sea Nymph. That's a little precious for a wreck like that, isn't it?
Some are even worse. I don't know how they stay afloat. There's somebody on deck.
What do you want?
Are you Captain Kovar?
That's right.
We want to talk to you about that body you brought in.
You the police?
No, this man is Mr. McDonald. Dan Blake works for him.
Hey, Cabra, get a line on the showboat. Okay, come on aboard. I'll put the ladder over.
Watch it. You got quite a pitch today.
My name is Dollar, Captain. I'm working on the burglary for an insurance company.
Come on in the cabin. I'd like to learn about that burglary. All that police sergeant will tell me is that I got the money and I better give it to him. That'll take some doing. Now, take the chairs, you two. I'll take the bunk. Now, what about all this?
Well, there's a little over $75,000 missing.
He didn't have anything when I picked him up.
He was in a dugout canoe, huh?
That's right. Looked like a Moro craft to me. Oh, I see what you mean. It was empty. I looked it over.
How long did he live?
15, 20 minutes, maybe not that long. I don't think taking him aboard did any good, but I didn't know the shape he was in.
Did he say anything about the shooting?
Nothing I could understand.
What did he say?
I told you I couldn't understand. Just some noise.
Oh, but you were able to understand his name.
You're beginning to sound like that police sergeant, mister. I don't like that. I thought I was doing right when I brought that boy
Now,
in.
wait a minute, Captain.
We should have left him there. Police right now are getting papers to search my ship. Now you start.
I'm not making any accusations. You were the last person to see him alive. I'm interested in what he said.
He said Blake. That's all I could understand. I tell you the truth, I wish I'd left him there. But you know what I think?
What?
If he went from Manila to someplace on Tayabas Bay where he had his dugout, plenty could happen. That's about 60 miles. There's still a lot of trouble with the Hucks these days. They don't think twice when they get the chance to kill an American. $75,000, so much the better.
What do you think, Mr. McDonald?
Well, it's certainly a possibility.
I didn't bother questioning the crew. I knew that Sergeant Malvar, if he hadn't already, would take care of that when he returned to search the schooner. I spent the rest of the morning and part of the afternoon in routine legwork on the case, and at 4 o'clock I got the sergeant's report. He hadn't found the money. However, my legwork had uncovered an interesting point. Floyd McDonald was up to his neck in personal debts. I didn't think of the point, so I waited until his assistant, Irving Morgan, had gotten to his home. Good evening, Mr. Morgan.
Oh, hello. Well, I've been thinking about you. Come on in.
Thanks.
How's it going?
Well, it's hard to tell.
What I hear, that money's gone for good.
Did McDonald tell you that?
Yeah, isn't that right?
Maybe, but it's occurred to me that these Hucks could be pretty handy people to have around.
I don't get you.
Well, when a killing outside the city can't be explained any other way, it's marked off to the Hucks.
Well, you don't think they shot Blake?
Well, I'm not as sure of it as everybody else seems to be.
Well, just what do you mean, Mr. Dollar?
How much did you know about McDonald's personal life?
Why, I see him socially, if that's what you mean. We're good friends.
Does he owe you any money?
Well, it seems to me that's a very personal question.
Well, I have to ask that kind once in a while. I've learned that McDonald owes a lot of money to a lot of people. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. Loans, gambling debt.
He'd be ruined if this became common knowledge, Mr. Dollar. He'd lose his position, everything.
How far do you think McDonald would go to save himself?
Are you telling me you think Floyd arranged this theft?
Well, it's something to think about.
And killed Blake? Oh, no, he didn't.
You're sure?
Why, he couldn't have. He's not that kind of man. He's desperate, yes, but he'd never do a thing like that.
Would he be at home now?
No, I don't think so. It's only 7. He usually has dinner at the club.
What club?
The Merchants Club. Oh, Mr. Dollar, don't question him down there. Wait till he gets home.
All right. And I can count on you not to tell him I'm waiting for him.
You certainly can. I want to stay as far away from this as possible.
An hour and a half later, a cab dropped me in front of Floyd McDonald's home. The residence, at least, was a picture of propriety. I followed the sidewalk across a neatly hedged lawn, and halfway to the house, I stopped to watch a man come out the front door. Well, Captain Kova.
What do you want?
What are you doing here?
Forget it.
No, I can't. What's your part in this?
Never mind. Forget you saw me.
Come here.
Over. Get off. Get off.
Oh. Now you.
Well, I didn't expect this. You live here?
Yes.
I came to talk to your uncle. Is he here?
No.
And Captain Kova was with you.
Yes, Captain Kova was with me.
You're hurt. What did he do to you?
He hit me.
Why?
Because he's insane. He thought he had to hit me. He wanted the money, and I gave it to him.
You gave him the money?
All of it, every penny of it. I didn't want it anymore.
Well, that's not what I mean. You were holding the money for Dan Blake?
For us. We were together.
Kova earned it from Dan before he died.
Yes. Dan kept calling for me when he was dying, and Captain Kova thought he was blackmailing me. I thought I gave him the money to keep him quiet. But I didn't. Dan and I tried to get away from this place. Have a life of our own. We tried. Now, I don't care what happens to me.
Where's the telephone?
Through that door, but you don't have to. I'll go to the police by myself. I just wanted to wait until Uncle Floyd got home.
I'm not worried about your personal problems, Charlotte. That's not my job. Kova and that $75,000 is all I want. I tried not to waste a minute, but time slipped by. 15 minutes on the phone, 25 minutes to get back into Manila. But when Sergeant Malvar finally arrived at the harbor police dock, a boat was ready for us.
I come as quick as I can. The ship is not at anchor?
I checked it. He moved out about 20 minutes ago.
We'll go then. Estamos listos. It's dark night.
What if we don't find him?
Well, he don't get out of bay. Both here corregidor are right now waiting. The girl, she was accomplice?
Well, she held the money, so if he was picked up, you couldn't prove possession. She was going to meet him later.
The hook shoot him?
That's what Kovac told her.
Oh, but the hook don't kill them.
What's that?
The police doctor, he said bullets don't kill Blake. Blake choked to death. The Kovac killed him to learn secret.
I think we can prove that, Sergeant. Can we get any more speed out of this thing? A 20-minute start isn't much when a schooner with auxiliary power is matched against a police boat. With our speed and the beams from 4 searchlights spanning out around us, we covered every possible course that Kovas could have set. It took us less than 30 minutes.
Ahí está!
Yeah, there she is.
Now I saw this man we have struck. Tiene unos balazos adelante de él. We fired in front of him.
That's slowing him down.
He cursed me, that man, when I searched the ship. Now Sergeant Malvar hit close back. Fuego! Stop, bully. Is he crazy? Maldito sea one of our lights. He is crazy. But he don't get away. We move him right now and go on board. Vamos a abordarlo.
He's shouting something.
Capitan Kova, there is no use to fight. We come aboard. Vamos, get the engine. Get started.
He's got to be stopped, Sergeant.
Abran fuego.
Expense account item 4, $230. Blanket item covering hotel, transportation, etc. Item 5, same as item 1. Expense account total, $2,611.80. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
For your listening enjoyment, John Lund as
Johnny Dollar.
Tom Leslie, Johnny. I'm sending you a check for $25,000 by special messenger.
Well, thanks. I can use it.
You're going to buy a painting with it in Detroit. A 17th century masterpiece called The River, painted by Jan Brueghel.
Why?
It was stolen 11 years ago from a Lauren Jeffers. We paid the claim on it. A cool $120,000. We just got a tip we can buy it back for $25,000.
Well, you know how I feel about paying off for the return of stolen property.
And you know how we feel about taking a $120,000 loss.
Yeah?
Well,
Well, okay, but I won't like it.
Right now, I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to pass on a thought which, incidentally, concerns time. According to the Bible, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. We all agree on that, I'm sure. And we'll also agree that the regulation of time also depends on the seasons. For example, did it ever occur to you who decided where our 4 time zones in America should be exactly? Well, back maybe 75 years ago, there were about 150 different time zones which were set up according to the whim of the local inhabitants. Most of the time was called sun time, and there could be 15 minutes difference between the clocks of 2 towns only 10 miles apart. So, to get rid of the confusion, the Interstate Commerce Commission was established. It divided the United States into 4 standard time zones so that railroads, planes, buses, and the mail could run on schedule. Of course, if a city wants to go on daylight saving time during the summer, that's a decision which is made locally. The standard time remains the same everywhere else. But setting the nation's clocks isn't the only job of the Interstate Commerce Commission, however. It also makes rules and regulations for the various means of transportation which go from one state to another. It sees that railroads, truck lines, barges, and boats operate safely, charge reasonable rates, and give good, dependable service. It also protects trucks and bus drivers from working such long hours that they might fall asleep while they're driving. The Commission also demands that trains, engines, and machines have safety and stop devices. It is, in itself, a safety device to assure every one of us freedom from danger as we travel about our country.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Eastern Indemnity and Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Brueghel matter. Expense account item 1, $43.10. Airfare and incidentals between Hartford and Detroit, Michigan. Expense account item 2, $1. Cab fare from the Statler Hotel, where I'd checked in, to the Masterson Art Galleries on Woodward Avenue. A rather nervous little man came scurrying out from behind some velour draperies to greet me.
Good afternoon, sir. Well, good afternoon. Is there something we can do for you today?
Are you Mr. Masterson?
Oh, no. Mr. Masterson. No, I'm Hacker. Merwin Hacker. You might say I'm Mr. Masterson's general factotum around here. General fact. I'd be more than pleased to be of service to you if I may, though.
No, thanks. I'd like to talk to Mr. Masterson personally.
Yes, of course. This way if you please.
Thanks.
So we're having a wonderful exhibit of modernistic expressionism in the West Gallery this afternoon. Right this way. But of course you're a little bit early for that. If that's your reason for being here.
It's not.
Oh, is that so? Well, then perhaps you've heard of the new Van Gogh we just got in? Have you heard of it? A stunning painting. Oh, it's simply stunning. Perhaps you'd come see that then.
Well, thanks for your trouble, Mr. Hacker.
I beg your pardon?
Well, this is Mr. Masterson's office, isn't it?
Mr. Masterson? Oh, yes, of course. Oh, Mr. Masterson. Yes, of course. But I'm glad you've been of service to you, sir. I'm very glad.
I'm Johnny Dollar, Mr. Masterson, from Eastern Indemnity.
Oh, yes, the insurance man. Come in, Mr. Dollar.
Thanks.
You know, it's quite a novelty to me, Mr. Dollar, acting as a go-between in the return of stolen property.
Yeah, I imagine it is. Would you mind telling me how you got involved?
Well, not at all. Sit down, won't you?
Thank you.
Well, as I informed your home office, a man came in here a few days ago. He wanted me to appraise a painting for him.
Did he have the painting with him?
He did. The moment he showed it to me, I recognized it for what it was. The River by Brueghel.
You knew it was stolen property?
A famous masterpiece like that, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, what happened then?
It was my intention to detain him on some pretext until I could phone the police, but he became suspicious and left.
What was his next move?
Yesterday morning, he called me on the telephone and offered me a commission if I would act as intermediary. I was to get in touch with the insurance company and have one of their men here this afternoon at 4 o'clock.
He's going to call back then?
Yes.
Uh-huh. 2:30 now.
Yes. That gives you an hour and a half in which to make plans for capturing him and recovering the painting.
I'm afraid it's not going to work out that way.
Oh?
There's a little thing called the statute of limitations working in his favor. In this particular case, it expired some years ago.
You mean that even if you can prove this man stole the painting, he can't be prosecuted for it?
That's right.
Incredible. Well, but then I suppose it's worth it. At least a masterpiece will be returned to the world again.
I guess that's one way of looking at it. Expense account item 3, $1.95. Cab fare to police headquarters at 1300 Beaubien. Up on the 4th floor, I introduced myself to Lieutenant Griswold of the Robbery Division, who brought out the original file on the case. It wasn't too informative.
Yeah, I can't say the department's very proud of this particular file, Dollar.
Oh, why not, Lieutenant?
We worked on the case for over a year. There's the result. Pages of reports, everyone negative. We drew a complete blank.
What was your personal reaction? Do you have any particular hunches or ideas?
Yeah, one. Only it didn't pay off.
What was it?
I figured it was an inside job. Maybe involving Selena Jeffers.
Selena Jeffers?
Lauren Jeffers' daughter.
Oh.
Only surviving member of the family now. She was about 18 at that time, studying art.
Well, what set you off on her?
One of the maids said Selena had fallen in love with the picture. Had a real fixation on it. Wanted old man Jeffers to hang it in her room, not let anybody else see it. Thought it was the greatest thing that had ever been put on canvas. Couldn't tie her up with it, though.
I see.
That's about it, Dollar. No sense in your digging into it again at this stage of the game. I'd say you better make your deal, if that's what you want to do.
It's not. Looks like I'll have to. Expense account item 4, $2.05. Cab fare back to the Masterson Galleries. The phone on Masterson's desk rang promptly at 4 o'clock. Hello?
You're not Masterson. Oh, you're the insurance boy?
That's right. Who are you?
Skip the questions, Mac, and put this down. Be at 2135 North Diversity at 10:30 tomorrow morning, apartment 3B. Have the $25,000 in cash with you. Small bills, nothing bigger than a 50.
That'll make quite a load to carry around.
You want the painting back? Do as I say.
Okay. But I'm bringing someone along to identify that painting for me.
Sure. Bring the whole police department if you want. You can't put a rap on me. I'm just doing you guys a favor.
Yeah, I know. And you're getting well paid for it, too. Expense account item 5, $3.95. Cab fare out to 1735 Cannon Road in Grosse Pointe. Selena Jeffers was standing near the edge of a bluff overlooking Lake St. Clair, busily painting the view. My arrival didn't disturb her concentration in the least.
So you think you're going to recover the Jan Brueghel landscape, Mr. Dollar?
Well, it looks like it, Miss Jeffers.
I suppose that has some connection with your visit out here.
Yes, it has. I thought you might be interested in buying it back.
Why?
Well, it belonged to your family. I understand you used to think a good deal of it.
Yes, I did. That was years ago. I'm not interested in buying it now. I prefer the moderns these days.
I see. Well, just thought I'd ask.
Oh, sure. Anything else, Mr. Dollar?
Yeah. Maybe you'd like to do me a favor tomorrow.
What's that?
Come along with me when I buy the picture back.
Why?
I need someone to identify it.
I think one of the half dozen art dealers could do that for you.
They couldn't identify the man who's selling it to me. If he's somebody out of your family's past.
But if I can identify this person, isn't there some time limitation or something on prosecutions of this sort?
Oh, don't worry. You won't send him to jail.
And I fail to see the purpose.
Maybe it's just because I'm curious. Well, Miss Jeffers?
I'll go with you.
Expense account item 6, $4.10. Cab fare back to the Statler, where I remained until the following morning. At 10 a.m., I went to the bank where I cashed your check. At 10:15, Selena Jeffers picked me up in a nice blue Eldorado. At 10:30, we stood in the dingy corridor of a cheap apartment hotel at 2135 North Diversey. The name on the door of apartment 3D was Eddie Travers.
Yeah?
I'm Johnny Dollar.
Oh, the insurance boy, huh? Come in, Dollar.
Thank you.
Dollar going to check the painting for you?
That's right.
Yeah. You, got the dough?
Oh, I'm not carrying laundry in this money bag.
Very cute. Let's count it.
Let's see the painting.
Okay, but don't try any funny stuff. I got friends in the next room. This way, baby. It's in the closet.
All right.
There it is.
How about it, Miss Jeffers?
That's the painting, Mr. Dollar.
You sure?
Positive.
Okay. Here's the money, Travers.
Don't mind if I count it now, do you, Dollar?
No, go right ahead.
Is there any reason why I should wait around, Mr. Dollar?
Now, what about this fellow Travers?
I've never seen him before.
You're sure about that?
Just as sure as I am about the painting.
Sounds like you hope the doll might have put a finger on me, Dollar.
Well, I just like to play all the angles, Travers.
Sorry this one didn't work out for you, Mr. Dollar. If you ever happen to recover any good modern impressionists, look me up again. I might be interested in buying those from you.
I'll keep that in mind, Miss Jeffers. And thanks.
You know something? I don't figure you insurance guys. What's it to you how I make out in this deal? No dough out of your pocket?
A guy like you always looks at it that way.
So what's so bad about that?
Oh, nothing. If you like your view obstructed by bars. Expense account item 7, $3.45. Cab fare. First to Masterson's Galleries, where I left the painting to be held until you decided what to do with it. Then back to the Statler Hotel. In spite of my brave remarks to Eddie Travers, I still had no more idea of how to change the course of events than I'd had when I arrived. Expense account item 8, $15.75. Hotel bill, miscellaneous, and transportation to the airport. Yeah?
You remember me, Mr. Dollar? Merwin Hacker, Mr. Masterson's assistant.
Oh, yeah, I remember, Mr. Hacker.
When they told me you'd checked out of your hotel, I was stunned. I was so afraid I wouldn't get here in time.
In time for what?
Well, tell me, Mr. Dollar, is it true that you brought that Brueghel landscape to the gallery?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, my. And is it true you paid $25,000 for it?
I did.
Oh, dear. What a pity. I really don't know how to tell you this.
Tell me what?
Well, that picture, the Brueghel landscape, I think it's a forgery.
You know, many great men have attained the highest office in our land, the presidency of the United States. Can you guess the name of this man? He was only 28 when he was elected to the House of Representatives and the youngest member of the Senate to which he was elected in 1837. During his administration, the Kansas-Nebraska bill, leaving slavery to popular vote, was passed. The Gadsden Purchase from Mexico added some 45,000 square miles of territory in what is now Arizona and New Mexico. And Japan opened its doors for the first time to trade with the United States. If you don't have his name by now, here's one more important clue. During his administration, the Republican Party, as we know it today, was born. Who was he? Franklin Pierce, 14th President of the United States. His life is part of your American heritage.
And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Merwin Hacker drove me back to the Masterson's Galleries from the airport, babbling all the way. Everything he told me en route, he said all over again as we entered the storeroom at the rear of the galleries.
Now, there it is. You see, Mr. Dollar? Now, just look at that. Now, just look at that. Oh, it's a superb piece of work. Oh, it's superb. And a forgery.
Well, suppose you show me how you were tipped off, Mr. Hacker.
Well, as I told you, Mr. Dollar, it was mere happenstance. Mr. Masterson had left, and I was preparing the painting for storage. I just suppose it was out of sheer nervousness. I've never really worked with as valuable a masterpiece as this before. And you know what? My hand slipped. And right here, right down here in the very lowest corner, right there, you can hardly notice it. You see what happened?
Where?
Right there.
Looks like you flicked off a little bit of paint.
That's exactly what happened, Mr. Dollar. And there was the proof, you see.
No, I'm afraid I don't.
You don't? Well, look. Now look closely, Mr. Dollar. You see where the little specks of paint were flecked off? Now, what do you see?
Oh, more paint underneath.
Yes?
Only that seems to be clear and shiny. No cracks in it.
Oh, exactly, Mr. Dollar. Comparatively fresh paint. If that canvas had been centuries old, the paint would have been dried and cracked all the way through.
Yeah. Who's the biggest expert in town on these things, Mr. Hacker?
The biggest expert? Oh, you mean on art forgeries?
Yeah, art forgeries.
Oh, yes. Let me see now. Art. Yes. Oh, of course. Stephen Durwood. Yes, he's your man. Stephen Durwood. He has a studio just a few blocks down in Woodward. But what a pity. It's such a magnificent piece of work. And completely worthless.
Oh, I don't know. I just paid $25,000 for it. While Hacker prepared the canvas for me to take over to Durwood, I went into Masterson's office and put in a call to Lieutenant Griswold.
You sure it's a forgery, Dollar?
Well, I'm taking it to Stephen Durwood for an opinion. But I don't think there's any doubt.
If it's the same painting that was stolen from Lauren Jeffers, we still haven't got anything.
No, but what if it's not?
I'll get out a pickup on Eddie Travers.
Expense account item 9, $4.50, cab fare. First to the studios of Stephen Durwood.
Why not drop back in an hour and a half or so, Mr. Dollar? That should give me time for a preliminary examination. But I can tell you right now that if this painting is a forgery, it's the most magnificently created fraud I have ever seen.
The next stop was Grosse Pointe and the Jeffers home. Selena was in the library, curled up comfortably in a big easy chair, sipping a drink.
This visit is a little unexpected, isn't it, Mr. Dollar? I hadn't thought I'd see you so soon again.
Are you disturbed about it, Miss Jeffers?
Why should I be?
Well, maybe because that Brueghel you identified might be a forgery.
Would you care for a drink, Mr. Dollar?
No, thanks.
That was a rather astounding statement you just made.
Why? It's not the first so-called masterpiece that turned out to be a fraud.
There's a little more than that involved.
Like what?
A child's dream of perfection. That's what the Brueghel meant to me. I worship that painting, Mr. Dollar. To me, it was a symbol of the beauty that man can create in an ugly, hateful world. And now you tell me that I've been worshiping fraud.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe this one is another painting entirely.
But you don't think so.
Was the Brueghel that was stolen 11 years ago a forgery, Miss Jeffers?
I thought I'd already answered that.
Well, I'm not satisfied with the answer.
Then think about this. If you can prove that the Brueghel forgery or not is the same painting that was stolen from this library, give it back to me and I'll make out a check to your insurance company for $120,000. Do you think that will satisfy you, Mr. Dollar?
Well, it'll satisfy Eastern Indemnity. Expense account item 10, $3.95. Cab fare back to Stephen Durwood Studios. He'd finished his examination of the painting and had his report ready for me.
Frankly, Mr. Dollar, I'm almost at a loss as to what to tell you. I examined the Brueghel minutely, and I would be willing to swear that the canvas, the pigments, the brushes used are all genuine 17th century. And the painting appears to have been aging for not less than 3 centuries.
But you don't think it has been?
I might have, if it weren't for the little flecks of paint that were scraped off one of the flowers down in the corner. There is something pretty strange about that, Mr. Dollar.
What?
Well, I have taken samples of paint from other spots on the canvas. The apparent age of the oils goes all the way through. Only in that one spot on that flower does a fresher, more modern-looking paint show through.
Was there any explanation for that, Mr. Durwood?
Well, you see, some forgers get their aging effect by baking the completed canvas in an electric oven. Now, in this case, it is possible the forger slipped up by failing to remove the clamp or the pincers he used to place the canvas in the oven. Will you excuse me?
Of course.
Yes, Stephen Durwood speaking. Why, yes, he is. Just one moment, please. It's for you, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, thanks. Hello?
Griswold, Dollar. Had a hunch you might be there. Can you come down to headquarters?
What's up, Lieutenant?
We just got Eddie Travers.
Expense account item 11, $1.25. Cab fare to police headquarters. Eddie Travers wasn't very anxious to give us any answers.
Look, I'm giving it to you straight, fellas. I don't know anything about this job.
You turned the painting over to me for $25,000, Travers.
Sure I did, but I didn't have anything to do with heisting it. Even if I did, the time's run out on that rap.
Yeah, he's right on both counts, Dollar.
Sure.
He was serving time in Jackson when the original robbery took place.
But what are you picking me up for? You got nothing to hold me on?
How about operating a confidence game? Or conspiracy to defraud?
What are you giving me? You wanted a paint and I sold it to you. There's no bunko wrap on that.
Yeah? There is when you pass out a forgery for the real thing.
Forgery?
The painting's a phony, Travers. That'll spell fraud and confidence game to any jury.
Huh?
And with a previous record, you should get 10 to 20 without any trouble at all.
Wait a minute. Hold it. You giving it to me straight?
That's right. You're hooked but good, Travers.
Why, that load. Now, crummy. Should have known there was something wrong. He laid it out for me too easy. The time's run out, he says. They can't get you on a thing, he says. All you got to do is turn over the painting and collect a 10% split, he says. Look what happens.
What's his name, Travers?
Real big shot, dropping a load week after week in a floating crap game, and he gets me hooked for 25 C's.
What's his name?
Hacker, Merwin Hacker.
While Travers dictated an official statement, we put in a call to the Masterson galleries. Masterson had returned by then and told us that Hacker had left for his home near Farmingdale about an hour before. It turned out to be a 5-acre farm, well off the main road. We checked the house and came up with nothing. We had better luck at the barn.
That's a pretty nice setup, Dollar.
Yeah, sure is. Electric oven, plenty of old canvases.
Looks like he was set up to turn out art forgeries on a production line basis.
Yeah.
I guess we've got plenty of physical evidence here. This with the exception of Merwin Hacker himself.
That's no problem.
What?
He's over here, behind this partition.
Well, he won't do any talking.
He doesn't have to. That gun in his hand did it for him. After the homicide men took over, Griswold drove me back downtown. I picked up the painting at Stephen Durwood's and took it to Masterson's gallery for the last time.
Merwin Hacker? An art forger? Well, you must be joking, Mr. Dollar.
I'm afraid not, Mr. Masterson.
But the man has been working for me for over 15 years. How could he possibly have been conducting such an underhanded business without my knowing of it?
Frankly, I don't think he was.
But you just said he'd been forging these masterpieces.
Forging them, yes. Without your knowledge, no.
Well, I'm confused, Mr. Dollar.
Well, it's one thing to create these forgeries. It's another to dispose of them. That takes a good, legitimate front. Like the Masterson Art Galleries, for instance.
Really, Mr. Dollar. Now you're the one who seems to be confused.
Well, I was confused for a while, trying to figure why Hacker disclosed the forgery to me himself.
But you're not now?
No. I think Hacker suddenly found out you were paying him only nominal sums for the forgeries and selling them at a tremendous profit to yourself. And when he learned about this latest double cross, he decided two could play at that game.
A very interesting theory, Mr. Dollar. Too bad you can't prove it.
Uh-huh. Would you mind telling me why you stole the painting from Lauren Jeffers?
Well, not at all. It was the flaw in it. The Brueghel was the first work that Hacker attempted. I sold it to Jeffers. After it had been hanging for a while, the paint began to fleck off in that one corner. I was afraid Jeffers would get suspicious and called in some experts.
So you beat him to the punch by stealing the painting back?
Exactly. Too bad you had all that brilliant detective work for nothing, Mr. Dollar. But as you once admitted yourself, there's always the statute of limitations.
Yeah? And there's always Merwin Hacker.
And what about him, Mr. Dollar?
He's dead. And there's no statute of limitations on murder. Expense account item 12, $1.60. Cab fare down to police headquarters with Masterson in tow. Paraffin test showed that he'd recently fired a gun while Merwin Hacker's hand was clean. Eddie Travers identified Masterson as the man who'd been passing himself off as Merwin Hacker. Lieutenant Griswold says he can make the murder rap stick. Expense account item 13, $49.25. Airfare and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $135.85. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by Sidney Marshall with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were Parley Bear, Howard McNear, William Johnstone, Jack Moyles, Hal March, and Virginia Gregg. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle.